As millions file their taxes this week, Congress gives more power to the IRS. What does this mean for you, Joe Q. citizen? I'm Allen Barton. Stand by for the front page. Joining me in studio, Yaron Brook, president of the Iron Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. All right, Terry, the Senate, I didn't believe this when I read this. Anyway, the Senate recently passed a bill giving the government the power to confiscate passports if people owe enough in taxes. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, well, this came in under the rubric of the transportation bill, of course.
It has to do with highway funding.
It's transportation and highway funding, right?
Right.
Well,
there
you're
you
moving somewhere, so I guess that's right. Where it came in. But the idea was that somebody who had more than $50,000 they owed the IRS would selectively be able to say, no, you can't travel. Now, what the purpose of this, I have no idea. I mean, even if you do owe them $50,000, why shouldn't you be allowed to travel? Maybe you're an international businessman and you need to go overseas to earn the $50,000. But they could selectively say no, and this is why we call it a Stalinist ploy. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they can basically control any of your actions.
Yeah, you're on. I mean, it's kind of a regulation fence. Well, keeping people inside. Because of it's not a fence with guards and guns, but they have this power to remove the document that allows you to travel because you owe them money, or they say you owe them money.
They say it's just suspected of owing.
There's no due process.
There's no due process, and that's the real issue here. And this is kind of the trend that I think we're seeing. And this is going to the House of Representatives, where it's expected to be passed in a Republican with a Republican Congress. So, you know, the problem here is due process. I mean, this is one of the most important parts of the Constitution, is the fact that the government cannot control your activities. It cannot tell you what you can and cannot do unless it proves, unless it goes through a whole process of proving that you are a threat
and allowing you the option to defend yourself and to defend.
By the way, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. Here, the presumption is you're guilty, and then you can appeal, right? I'll take away your passport, and then you can appeal. And this goes back, think about the RICO Act. Now, I know the RICO Act was really targeted at gangsters. This is an act that basically says, if we suspect that you're colluding with others in a conspiracy, you know, underworld or financial or whatever, we can seize your assets. And if it turns out you're innocent, we'll give them back to you. And this is one of the laws that has been most abused since the 1980s on the books today, because it's basically destroyed people's businesses because they're seized, they're not functioning, and then people turn out to be innocent, and then what is the government returning them? Nothing. So the issue of due process, I think it's one of the great tragedies that the Supreme Court has not really stuck to the principle.
They recently came down on that EPA case, right, with that couple who had a farm and they couldn't develop it because of the water rights, and at least the EPA said you have to allow them to appeal. There was no ability for those people to appeal this decision by the EPA. And I want to get back to the IRS because, of course, everyone knows that Obamacare has, via the Obamacare bill, they've funded the hiring of God knows how many IRS agents, because IRS agents are integral to healthcare. Integral to your health is having more IRS agents to collect the taxes to pay for the healthcare. Now, if the Supreme Court overturns the law, of course they won't hire these people, and if they have hired the people, I'm sure they'll let them go immediately.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. They'll be gone.
Because we know most government agencies shrink when their time is over.
In which case, all those
they're very efficient.
All those umpteen IRS agents hired to enforce healthcare taxation will be leashed upon the wandering American public to see how you're doing on your tax collection.
Well, and they're hiring 300. You know, you mentioned this special subvention of funds, $500 million, which did not require congressional approval, by the way. They just took it out of a slush fund that the Health and Human Services had and slopped it over to the IRS and said, hire 300 people. And those 300 people are now going to be looking over your taxes to see that you're compliant with Obamacare. And they're going to have even more. They're going to have ultimately thousands of new agents in the IRS to take care of this.
Looking after your health.
I think we have to be careful what we say about these people, because you know, we could be audited.
Yeah.
we might want to be careful.
Yeah, they're looking after your health.
And
It's
you
for
know,
your
how would I
benefit.
have had my back surgery if not for IRS agents?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the one. He was in the corner of my, you know, in the room there, and he was making sure the doctor did a good job. And
Well, there's another one in the finance bill, I think Dodd-Frank, that creates this agency that is funded by taxation of the big banks, again, without any due process.
Without any due process and without any direct oversight by Congress. And it has a tremendous amount of power, and they've already funded it at about $150 million, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's just an initial startup.
Oh, that's a startup.
Funding. That's like
million.
seed money. The big bucks will come later.
I want to open a coffee shop. Give me $150 million. I'll start it up. I'll get it going, you know, and we'll see how it goes with the $150
coffee
million.
better be really good.
Yeah, and then I'll have to use that up, because if I don't use it up, I don't justify more funding.
But this is what happens. Once you abandon constitutional principles, they will run all over it. I mean, most of the regulatory agencies in the U.S. today do not abide by the due process clause. Unfortunately, as we said, the Supreme Court here and there once in a while comes back to it, but it's too often they've let government get away with violating our rights without any due process. And this is a good example. They can just take your passport, whether your livelihood depends on it or not. You can't leave the United States. And I think IBD calling it a Stalinist program is absolutely on point.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. For Yaron and Terry, I'm Allen Barton, and you've been watching Front Page.